Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I forgot to say that at the beginning of this video, so I'm going to do a pre-introduction. So I just ate lunch. I've made this entire video. I was eating lunch. I was going through the channels, and Tom Cruise was on with Pat McAfee on ESPN, and so I went to CNN, and they were talking about Trump meeting with the African president, who's a black dude, an African man, and they talked about how the thing went south. So I switched over to MSNBC, which was covering it, and Trump was talking about getting a private jet, and the South African president said that Trump, he was sorry he didn't have a plane to give to Trump, right? They were supposed to be talking about a trade deal. But the thing apparently went south when Trump has been letting white farmers in, apartheid farmers who are, running for their lives. And, he's kicking out all the other refugees, but allowing white Africans in. And I'm not covering that in this video. I'm going to do a whole beginning of my next video will be about that, because it looks awesome. And I was thinking about it, like, awesome in the sense of how bad it is. And, if it wasn't for Republicans, so-called truthers, right? If you're a truther, you're a truth seeker. And if you're a truth seeker, the ultimate truth is stuff that's hard for you to hear. It's easy to hear the truth that's about other people. It's easier to hear the truth is about other, your enemies, right? And not people that you love or admire, or, when you have someone you look up to and you admire, and you make them into something they're not, you idolize them, or you have institutions like your religion or your political party that you believe in, it's hard to hear truth about that. It just is, like stuff that, that you identify with. And that's not being a truther. Like being a truther, you have to look at those things. If you're being a scientist, you have to disprove your own theories. You have to work to try to disprove your own theories. You just don't look for things that agree with you. And Trump is one of the worst at, not disproving his own theories, his own BS. And so, this would be a pretty awesome time with Trump being so bad. But there's, a hijacking of the so-called truth community that's destroyed it, with the QBs and the flat earthers and the right-wing Trumpers and all these people who, aren't truth seekers. Many of them don't have the capabilities. I'm going to get to this at the end of the video in a voiceover. And, it's a real bummer, because it's so obvious that Trump's like a bonehead, and it's kind of hilarious, because he's doing God's work and taking a system that needs to be taken down. Like, he can't do real damage, because the system is screwed anyway. We're effed anyway by the nature of a debt-based demonic system. And so taking that down is doing God's work, whether you're a buffoon or you're a saint or you're, whatever you are as a person. He's doing God's work. And so, I can get with that and enjoy how funny it is that Trump's such a bonehead, which I show you a lot in this video, and apparently it's going to continue on to next video. But it sucks when there are people who can't see through it, right? Like the majority of people in the truth community. And so, it's sad and pathetic. But anyways, let's get to it. I have a bunch of funny stuff to get to here, and then I'll continue on my next video. Okay, so I want to start off here where I left off in my last video, with Trump doing that BS thing with James Comey. The situation that it's at hand, Biden campaigning on we're fighting for the soul of America, and Trump, saying if Biden got reelected, America would be done. And Elon Musk coming in saying what we're doing is not sustainable, and if we continue, the country would go bankrupt. I have that as a meme because of the amount of money that we are spending, right? And what we're spending is $8 trillion, and our income's $5 trillion. And then there's extra expenditures that aren't part of the budget, like Social Security and these other things. So everybody is aware, and they've said these things out loud, which is a bad thing, because the only way that America survives any length of time is to pretend that that isn't the case, right? There's no paying off the debt. If you've been in revolving debt, credit card debt, and your income is $30,000 and your expenses are $80,000 and growing, and then there's always going to be things you don't have, that you don't have a plan for that happen to you, hidden expenses. It's going to happen. You just get more and more debt. And bankruptcy is not an option, obviously, for the United States of America. Trump, has used that in his personal business life before. But it's not anything that anybody can do. It's not a Trump fault. It's not a Republican fault. It's not a Democrat fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's all of our faults. But it's when they went over to a debt-based system with the Federal Reserve in the 1930s, 20s, and 30s when the Depression was caused. And we have all of these, this economic, Ponzi scheme. Eventually it collapses because it's just it's BS, right? It's not a true economy. And so to solve a problem like that, you would need people to be willing to change. And people aren't. You need people to be willing to take responsibility and be more than they are, right? And there would have to be a whole reworking of a global system in a way that would be effective in some, we'd have to scrub the old economy. You'd have to give up wealth. You'd have to give up things. The really rich people would have to forego their wealth. I mean, there's so many things that would have to happen. Everyone would have to embrace God in some way. And we would have to just say there's drastic changes that need to happen. It's like someone just said you have cancer and you have to rearrange your whole lifestyle in a way that's like everything. Give up all the things that are negative in your life and embrace the things that you don't want to do, the things that you've known your whole life you should be doing but you're not doing. And then even then it might not work, right? So that's not going to happen. Like that's what would have to happen here. Not so much a change in the system, but getting rid of the old system and bringing in a new system. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to, face the music, right? So there's nobody out there who could solve the problem. But if somebody was going to solve the problem, they'd have to be a spiritual master and an economic genius and somebody who could get people to buy in. Trump can get 30 to 40% of the people to buy in, but if he asks those 30 or 40% of the people to give things up, they'll turn on him. If he says to them, like that whole thing with the dolls, things like that. I mean, if he starts asking these people to change their lifestyle, they're like, I thought you were going to make America great again. So there's nothing anybody can do. So Trump's just a buffoon who's looking out for himself, right? But let's start here with this.
Well, new this morning, President Trump is accusing former FBI Director James Comey, who he had fired in his first administration, of threatening him.
Okay, let's go right to there is the thing he posted. So he posted an 86-47, right? We all know that. And
Senator Tommy Tuberville, for example, called the post beyond despicable and said James Comey must face consequences. Comey has since deleted the
moves
photo.
the thing to Trump here. That's where I want to get going.
President Trump says this about Comey's explanation. Listen to this.
Exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination.
Okay, so you think the former FBI director just posted a plan for assassinating the president on Twitter. And you think that guy has enough of a following out there that posting in seashells, a picture of seashells, you think the former FBI director is planning an assassination attempt against you in seashells, and he was stupid enough to announce it on Twitter. To all how many people are following Comey? What kind of following does he have on Twitter? Right? There's lots of people who wish Trump was dead, but very few people who are willing to do anything about it, right? To forego the Secret Service. And the only people who can really assassinate you, it has some sort of organization, the FBI, the CIA, some corporate, it would have to be some foreign government along with American agencies, right? The president is somewhat vulnerable, just like everybody is. But there hasn't been real assassination attempts on him already. They're going with this BS thing that they did before. But the thing is silly, right? The thing is silly. He posted something in seashells, and it could have multiple meanings. But Trump is like, this is one meaning. Where Trump is always talking about being, misinterpreted and how the media twists his words, the fake news and all that shit he says. And this is not an honest person who gives the same treatment to other people that he receives himself, or he would like to receive himself, right? Treat others like you like to be treated. It's a stupid thing that Comey did, and I think Comey, more than anything else, he wants attention, right? If he did this for any reason, if there's some nefarious plot here, it's for Comey to get attention. Because when's the last time we talked about James Comey? What's he even doing now, right? So just to get a sense of this, there's a James Comey here who's an author of legal thrillers. Latest FDR Drive on May 20th. Husband, father, pop, lawyer, teacher, speaker. Not the same James Comey, right? This guy, James Comey Outdoors, former FBI director. So if you search James Comey, he isn't even the top James Comey, right? He doesn't have a check mark. And me and Hillary Clinton, he has a joke about him and Hillary Clinton there. So he posts things from the outdoors pictures. This is his thing. What's it say here for, he has 3 followings, 127 followers. So there he is there. And there's decided to take a picture before they added Trump. Mueller, no collusion. I guess he's trying to be funny here. That's it. Like, he's got nothing else there. He just got a bunch of photos. Where's his apology? Did he take down his Twitter? Or was it on Instagram that he did this? Let's check Instagram. So I couldn't find him on either place. I don't know if that was him on Twitter. But, So it's like he has unless he canceled his account or something or whatever. He might have deleted the picture. He deleted the account. He already deleted the picture. But here, let's go back to it. Okay, so let me break in here. I'm editing. So the account, I believe it's a Twitter account, was called Comey. And it did have a check mark. And it seems to have been either privatized or deleted. So that's the original post. Either that or it's on Instagram called Comey. And at this point, who gives a shit? So let's move on.
Look, he's a very bad.
What do you want
look,
to see happen?
he is a.
What do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people. But I will say this: I think it's a terrible thing.
It's a terrible thing. Seashell pictures of 8647. It's just fundamentally dishonest and weak, and just it shows you everything about Trump. But this video, I'm going to show you his stupidity. Things that are, just almost criminally stupid about him. And, he's deteriorating into his Trumpness, which would have been funny before COVID. Like if his presidency had stayed the way and COVID never happened and he continued being a dope like this, the system's going down anyway. So there's no worry about that. Like, I don't care. I'm not worried Trump's going to take the system down. Because if it wasn't Trump, it'd be somebody else, right? The debt has gotten, there's 2 things going on. The amount of resources the U.S. is using is not sustainable. The economy, your lifestyle, all these things. The amount of energy, the population, the global population. There's going to be food shortage. There has to be reduction in population. There has to be all kinds of things happening. The debt-based economy doesn't work anymore. They've been fudging the numbers so much, and country by country, the globally business, all of it, and none of it works anymore. And it's only going on perception that money has value. That's always been the case. Money doesn't have value, and a perception-based economy can't last forever because people lose faith in it, and so. with all those things, Trump would be funny just as he was like Biden was funny, saying stupid shit. Like, it's funny when he says stupid shit, but not now, right? Like, because he's done so many things that are, it's abhorrent, right? You can't back something. It's like Kanye was funny until he just he crossed the line, with his so-called wife in air quotes and the rest of it. Crazy is funny until crazy is, harmful. And then it's no longer funny, or it just gets annoying. So let's start here with Kristi Noem. Now, this goes on the category where Trump says he hires all the best people.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
Madam Secretary. Secretary Noem, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff recently said that the Trump administration is actively looking at suspending habeas corpus. Last week you were asked about this, and I want to clarify your position because it's obviously really important to get this right. So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country.
Holy shit. Habeas corpus has nothing to do with that. It's the opposite of that, right? She does not know what habeas corpus is. Like, she's a Department of Homeland Security. She's fucking stupid, right? There's another Barbie that he's got in there. Trump likes the Barbies. He likes the Kens and the Barbies. Remember, he hires people. Oh, they're so good looking. He's very superficial. And, this is Department of Homeland Security, and this is a big deal, and should be a huge deal for everybody in the truth community. Everybody in the truth community's number one issue should be with Department of Homeland Security, which is about turning, its evil eyes on and spying on the American people. The Department of Homeland Security for so-called patriots is it's like the Cobra, the villain organization, like Cobra versus G.I. Joe or whatever these, negative, anti-American agenda things, right? It's like the evil thing. It's not, for the American people. It's to spy on the American people. It's to, create martial law. So every so-called patriot should be freaked out. I said this about the fucking stupid-ass Cubies. So, every patriot's supposed to be about fighting to keep our rights, like our judicial rights and habeas corpus and these other things, from being overrun. And being aware that what happens when you get rid of these things. And even if you think Trump's the greatest guy in the world and you're some kind of dope who thinks that, and he's wonderful, and you think he's going to be here forever and he's just going to leave one successor and J.D. Vance will take over, like, even if you thought that kind of stuff, which would be silly because there's going to be a Democratic president in 4 years, more than likely. And if it is, it's not going to be Trump. And so whoever inherits the White House is going to inherit a country without habeas corpus. And when it's a liberal and a Democrat, you'd be freaking out, right? And so when these QBs started to ask for the suspension of people's judicial rights, the right of habeas corpus, the right of due process, and have these people like Tom Hanks on just information that was on the internet, no official type convictions of these people, just shit that people were saying about them on the internet. Superficial, not even like circumstantial and superficial evidence. There was some evidence about all these creeps, but nothing substantial. And they wanted these people to be arrested, taken to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and then given secret military tribunals, all these indictments, these hidden indictments, these undisclosed indictments that they had, thousands of them. And these dopes, these so-called patriots, were pushing for it. Like people who, if you're too stupid to understand the importance of these rights that we have, there's a reason why we have them. And I'm not saying, I'm not a patriotic person. I'm not a founding fathers, constitutional, Thomas Jefferson, this bullshit, all that stuff. I'm not one of those people. But I understand how, like, all the laws that we have that are in our favor as citizens against the powers that be. So this is your rights as citizens to have due process, right? All the things that you have in your judicial rights and all these other rights that you have. When they take those away, you're just they can do anything to you. These countries where lords and kings and things, and they would just they're better than you, and it already exists in America. We know it exists now. We know that ultra wealthy people have a totally different set of rules. We know the people I call the controllers, what you call the elite. It's already there, even with these rights. But the rights are at least something. And as an American, if you're like an American patriot, you would know what habeas corpus is, and you would want to defend it. It's her job to defend it, right? Like, listen to this dumbass answer.
So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to.
Let me stop you, ma'am.
Suspend their
Habeas
right
corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President
Habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
President Lincoln used it. Like, she doesn't know. Like, and if you don't know it, you don't value it. You don't understand why it's there, right? You don't understand,
excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus
they can do this on a psychiatric hold, so there's already ways of doing this. Like, they can put you at a, 551, whatever it's called, psychiatric hold, and say that you're mentally incompetent, and they could just hold you forever that way, medicate you, and just keep on giving reasons. And, you can, fight it legally, but, like, this already exists. But, imagine if they could just, if you criticize Trump, like me, like I'm doing now, or any number of people out there are, and they just came to your house and grabbed you and threw you in prison. So when I was in Sri Lanka, I was in Chennai, India, and that's where the old headquarters, now it's in Hyderabad. They built this giant ashram in Hyderabad, but it used to be in Chennai, India. And Master Charji was a Brahmin. He was from South India. That's the highest class of people, especially in South India. And in terms of, like, their scholars and gurus and things like this, right? The caste system, which Charji was, asking people to opt out of because he knew it was bogus, but that was the caste he was in. And the people in Chennai live in this place called, they live in a state called Tamil, and they speak Tamilian, and they're Tamil people. And so off the coast of this part of India, this, Tamil, Chennai area, Chennai's the big city, 26 million people. There's a small country called Sri Lanka, which we would go to renew our visas. We were traveling on, tourist visas, and we'd have to go out of the country and renew the visa. And Sri Lanka was 10% Tamil, and it was 90% Sinhalese. And Sinhalese people are a little bit darker. They eat meat. Chennai, Tamil people are vegetarians and, more religious. And there was a bunch of people who did the meditation I do that were they're all Tamilian. And the Tamil people, there is a kind of a bogus fake terrorist group called the Tamil Tigers. And the Tamil Tigers have been run by the government of, the Sinhalese government. And a number of other organizations have used them, just like these fake terrorist groups are used globally, to enforce things. And there were two preceptors there. That's like a role in the Sashmark system. And one of the guys, an old guy, he said that the police came to his house and they were searching his house for evidence that he was, because he was Tamil, he was Tamil, that he was part of the Tamil Tigers. And of course he wasn't. But one of his friends had sent him a picture on like a social media thing of a Tamil tiger thing. And they didn't see it. If they had seen it, he would have been gone, disappeared. The other one was an 18-year-old kid. And he was 10 years old. He was also Tamil. And the Sinhalese government came over. It's a very corrupt government. It's a fucked up place, right? You know, it's like where Cuba is to America. Like, so it's 50 miles off the coast. You can get there by a ferry. You know, you can take a half-hour flight. It's just it's a beautiful island, but it's, you know, it's polluted and it's corrupt. And he was a kid, 10 years old, and the Sinhalese government police came to his house, took his father. He was 18 now, and he hadn't seen him since, seen or heard of him. He was completely disappeared. Didn't know if he was dead, didn't know if he was in prison, didn't know where he was. And so, you know, that happens all over the world. And it kind of happens still in America. They can do this, but it's a little bit more difficult. Where they just take you, they don't give you any trial, they don't even explain why they're doing it. And they throw you in jail or kill you or do whatever. This is what Trump is pushing for, right? And they're saying it's because of an immigration crisis that Trump doesn't even really care about. And there's always an excuse, right? You watch the sixth film in the Star Wars where Darth Vader, where Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader, whatever that one's called. You know, and they use these excuses to bring in martial law, which every patriot should be freaked out about. Like, every patriot should go, this fucking bimbo has got to go. Kristi Noem. She should know what habeas corpus is, and she should be defending it, right? And they're not defending it. They want to get rid of it. And that should be a red flag, and you're sitting there as so-called patriots, these Trumpers, you know, these right-wing fucking dopes, right? That this dope and his dopey people who can't even explain what something is and getting rid of it, right?
The foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea. As a senator from the live free or die state, this matters a lot to me and my constituents and to all Americans. So, Secretary Noem, do you support the core protection that habeas corpus provides, that the government must provide a public reason in order to detain and imprison someone?
Yeah, I support habeas corpus. I also recognize that the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to decide if it should be suspended or not.
It has never
Let us be clear, though, that this president...
It has never been done without approval of Congress. Even Abraham Lincoln got retroactive approval from Congress. So I have been asking executive branch nominees a simple question over the past few months. If the president orders them to break the law, I've been asking, will you follow the law or follow the order? I want to ask you a more specific question here. If the president tries to suspend habeas corpus and a federal court reverses the president's order, will you comply with the court order and uphold habeas corpus, or will you follow the president's directive?
We are following all federal court orders and are complying with that, as is the president, and every decision that I make as well.
That is obviously not true for anybody who reads the news. There are federal court orders right now, including returning somebody who was deported mistakenly.
I wouldn't rely on the news for your facts, but we rely on you guys, right? And so, this is bad. Fucking, you know, this is bad. Because Trump finds an obstacle. When he's trying to build something, when he's doing like one of his building projects, his bullshit building projects, and there's an environmental policy, and it might be a very valid one, or there's a policy that's there to protect, you know, people from slumlords, or any number of things. Trump has a team of lawyers to try to get around it, to change the law, to circumvent it. Like, this is what he's always done. And he's talked about this openly in his speeches. So he finds something, and he's like, all right, we should do this. And he has no information, because he's not a curious person. He's not a thoughtful person. He makes fucking many mistakes. He goes bankrupt. He fucking does stupid shit. And he doesn't look into things. He's not somebody he knows has a lot of knowledge. Oftentimes, he just gets up there and spouts bullshit, and it's all wrong. And he also, like he did with this thing with James Comey, even more so, when he said that the people in Haiti, the Haitian people, were eating the dogs and eating the cats, based on a debunked and I'm not talking about fact checker debunked, I mean really debunked, Facebook post by a woman who said her friend lost a cat and she thinks the Haitians ate it. And it went viral by right-wing Republican Trumper dopes, and it turned out the cat came back. And so it was a not eaten cat because it still exists. And Trump used that post when J.D. Vance talked to the mayor, who was a Republican in the town, and said, no, we're not having that kind of problem with the Haitian immigrants. And Trump disparaged a whole group of people in a debate watched by millions of Americans. They're eating the dogs. Let's show the meme here.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
These people are ignorant little children, right? So before we get into some of Trump's dopiness, which is quite epic, there's this. Speaking of Barbies.
Trust his physicians.
Two more things. Putin ghosted everybody at these peace talks last week. As President Trump phones him today to try to figure out an end to the Ukraine war, does he think that Putin is the good guy or the bad guy?
I'll let the president speak on that conversation later. He's made his feelings about both sides of this war quite clear throughout it. He wants to see it end.
And
Annie,
the last one, what does President Trump mean when he says that Taylor Swift is no longer hot?
Look, he is...
So why are you laughing at that? Like, a president should be saying stupid shit like that. You know, whatever that means, whatever, you know. I mean, I'm sure she'd sell out all her concerts if she's not doing that now. You know, he doesn't like her, whatever. Like, this is just, and I used to love this shit when Trump did it before. Because it made the presidency look like a joke. Because you had this buffoon who was tweeting in the middle of the night. Because all these people who are politicians are horrible people. Who have caved to their desire for power and fame. They're big ego people. They have bad intentions. You can't be a good person and survive the political juggernaut of evil, right? It's just all greasy and gross on every level. If you're a reporter, if you're a lobbyist, you know, it's just it's an ugly business. And you know, Trump made him, but they have this hoity-toity, you know, all these things that they do to make it look like it's elevated. These people are great people, and they're, you know, there's greatness here. It's not. It's just greasy. It's just, you know, it's 90% slime, 10% fake veneer, right? Fake, you know, a false veneer, right? Like, you know, caps on your teeth, right? Your teeth are rotting underneath, you know, fake caps that you've put on there to make it look like you have a nice smile. But you got fucking, you know, eight kinds of different, you know, dental issues, right? Like you've got gingivitis or whatever. Your teeth are a mess, right? You got, you know, but it's a fake smile that you've plastered on rotting teeth, like Gollum-like teeth, right? And so, you know, it used to be funny and good because the presidency is a joke. He's making a mockery of the presidency. But now he's like an evil buffoon king trying to bully people at a time where he's, you know, willing to suspend habeas corpus for some bullshit reason and bring in martial law because that's what he wants to do. He wants to circumvent all the rights and protections that are there for you. And he's giving you bullshit reasons. And as Trumpers, people are buying into it, right? Because they just fucking won't admit what they're seeing. Like, it's sick.
Speaking about Taylor Swift's political views and how perhaps it has impacted the support of the American public for her work. And I will leave it at that. Annie.
She's lost some Republican people. Maybe that's what you're talking about. But most of her fans are probably Democrats. Or will be Democrats because they're kids that don't give a shit. So they'll be whatever, you know, Taylor Swift tells them to be.
Why doesn't somebody fight the drug price situation, meaning equalization? There's a term. It's called equalization. Nobody wants to mention that term. And I'm not knocking the drug companies. I'm really more knocking the countries than the drug companies because they're forced to.
Okay, so let's go back there. You know, Kennedy he's smart and he had some good things to say. this guy lost to Fetterman. I don't know who these two stooges are, right?
Wants to mention that term. And I'm not knocking the drug companies. I'm really more knocking the countries than the drug companies because
The drug companies should be totally knocked. So first of all, he's not knocking Big Pharma for overcharging Americans. So he's talking about how if you go to other countries, they pay less for the same drugs than Americans do. And so he's knocking the countries that are getting better deals for their citizens and not the drug companies that are overcharging them. Like, this goes against everything he stands for. You know, these countries that are overcharging America and screwing America over. This is a real thing. This is a real thing that's being done by evil pharmaceutical people. They're overcharging them for their evil fucking side effect ridden medications that hurt people, right? And then, you know, they're overcharging them on top of it.
because they're forced to do things. But the drug lobby is the strongest lobby in this country, they say, the drug lobby. It's between that and lawyers. And
between that and lawyers? You think lawyers are a lobbying group? Lawyers lobby for people. What are you talking about? Israel has a very strong lobbying group. You talk about Israel? They own you. Pharmaceutical giants gave you money, Mr. Operation Warp Speed, you piece of shit. You know, for him to come out and try to blame anybody but the pharmaceutical giants, which have caused so much problems, right?
they have a lot of power. But starting today, the United States will no longer subsidize the health care of foreign countries, which is what we were doing. We're subsidizing others' health care. Countries where they paid a small fraction of what, for the same drug, that what we pay many, many times more for.
You're not supplementing the health care of these countries. What you're doing is, what's been done is that if what he's saying here, and I'm just hearing of this, right? But what he's trying to say here is American taxpayer dollars go to reducing drug costs in foreign countries. You know who benefits from that? The pharmaceutical giants. You know how much money the pharmaceutical giants get from America, right? American government and the American people for shitty medicine that hurts them, and then they need more pharmaceutical drugs. And Ozempic was going to cost the American government $3 trillion. This was what Casey Means, a guy that's supposed to work for Trump, was saying, that Ozempic was going to bankrupt America because once they put it on Medicaid and Medicare, then everybody's going to get it because everyone's obese. They're going to give it to kids. And this company that's like a New Zealand company, that's not even an American company, is one of the hottest companies and has got all kinds of upside now as a stock because America is about to give it $3 trillion in basically subsidies for shitty medicine that hurts you and it ruin these kids' digestive systems, and it's like a forever drug where once you take it, it fucks you forever. There's no fixing it, right?
And we'll no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma. But again, it was really the countries that forced Big Pharma to do things that, frankly...
The countries forced it? These other countries forced Big Pharma to undercharge them and screw America over? Fuck are you talking about? You hear this fucking dopey motherfucker? Like, what are you talking about? It was Big Pharma. They're just a victim here. Big Pharma is just a victim. Listen to what he's fucking saying here. So how much of does Pfizer's dick is in his ass, right? Like you fucking...
I'm not sure they really felt comfortable doing, but
they didn't feel comfortable. The Big Pharma is they're so good. What the fuck are you talking about?
Away with it, these countries. European Union has been brutal. And
they're brutal. They don't want to pay fucking astronomical prices for the shitty medicines that are caused by the shitty diet that they don't want to pay for. Like if you look at Quaker Oats oatmeal in Europe, in England, it's got 3 ingredients, and America's got like 50. You know, it's the food and they don't want their people poisoned by shitty food and shitty medicine like America does, and they don't want to pay, through the roof prices to big pharma. Like, listen to this motherfucker, right? A lot of these companies are European companies. Pfizer's from Germany, these various companies, Merck, these other companies. Like, they're mostly European. A lot of these are European companies.
Drug companies actually told me stories. It was just brutal how they forced them and European.
Oh, it's so brutal. If we were forced to gouge America and charge them cheap, what the fuck, right? Like, I mean, this is a fucking moron to try to say that shit. Like, is this what he actually believes? Like, listen to this fuck, sir. Like, listen, go back here.
That these countries, European Union, has been brutal. And the drug companies actually told me stories. It was just brutal how they forced them. And European Union suing all our companies, Apple, Google, Meta. They're suing all of our companies. They end up, they have judges.
That's not Big Pharma. Big Pharma are European companies.
That are European Union-centric.
Wait, they have judges that are rigged and for the benefit of these countries? That's crazy. And they don't let these guys do business in a nefarious way, American companies. And so, I mean, the European Union, they're so bad. Why would they be about themselves and not for us? I mean, same thing he was saying about Walmart. You eat the fucking tariffs, right? He just expects everyone to bow down and lick America's boots. Like he's a fucking moron, right? Like these countries all have their own interests. Why doesn't Denmark just give us Greenland? Fuck Denmark. Like he's a fucking child. And he doesn't know anything. He's like brain dead. Like his ability to process things. I mean, talk about Joe Biden. Like listen to the stupid shit he's saying. He's saying big pharma just wants to do good and give their wonderful magic pills to everybody at fair prices, but they're being screwed over by Europe, and now they have to screw us over by overcharging us and gouging us with their prices. They just big pharma. They're like, sir, can you fix this? Oh, you sir.
And they get rewarded 15 billion, 17 billion, 20 billion, and they use that to run their operation. Not going to happen any longer.
They're their government? Like, what fucking...
Tell you. So what's been happening is we've been subsidizing other countries throughout the world, not just in Europe, throughout the world. European Union was the most difficult.
You're subsidizing big pharma. Okay, when a company gets subsidized, that means the government's paying them for their shit, and they're going to overcharge because they can screw the government over, because they have lobbyists that buy politicians like you fucking scumbag. And so you're not subsidizing Europe with shitty pharmaceuticals. You're subsidizing the pharmaceutical industry. And now that you're not doing that, they're going to sell less of their bullshit when the prices go up, which is probably good for most people. Like I mean, it would, maybe occasionally I'll go on. Again, I'm not giving medical advice. But for me personally, I'm not a pharmaceutical person. Everything I've taken from big pharma, like I took Imitrex for my migraines. It worked like 3 times. And then every time after that, there was weird side effects, and it made the migraine worse. And so, I was willing to try something. There's been things I've tried over the years, if I've had to or whatever it is. And I'll take antibiotics if I really have to, because there's, if I can't find another way. I don't take Advil or anything like that. Like, it just bothers me. Even some of the herbal stuff. Like some things are just whatever. I can feel it in my system and there's whatever. And so, I don't value this at all. But I know a lot of people take this stuff and have to take it because they've committed this. They've gone all in, right? And Big Pharma gouges the shit out of them. And this was something Joe Biden was talking about as well, right? But he's saying Big Pharma's the victim?
From what I understand. I mean, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him.
He's a top guy, top businessman.
Highly neurotic.
Highly neurotic. The guy's crazy as a shithouse rat.
brilliant businessman,
Brilliant but neurotic, top guy.
seriously overweight. And
Fuck. Fat as fuck. I mean, just neurotic and fat and top guy.
takes the fat shot drug.
He takes the fat shot. He doesn't even know what Ozempic is. This is how fucking stupid this motherfucker is. You talk about Joe Biden not having word retrieval. He doesn't know what Ozempic is. He takes Ozempic or something like Ozempic, right? And it's kind of important because Ozempic's a shitty drug. I think Trump's taking it. My wife, I told her about this, and she had said that Trump, she thought he's lost a lot of weight. And I'm like, yeah, he has. So he's taking the fat shot, right? He's taking the fat shot. That's what he calls it. Trump calls it. And to Trump dopey people who are not thoughtful or not critical thinkers, who are like, yeah, the fat shot, but to people, you got to be smart as president. This is the kind of thing that people think, oh, he's talking my language. No, he doesn't know what Ozempic is. He can't remember it. But Ozempic is a foreign country, New Zealand company, like I said, that's about to bankrupt, according to his health secretary and this guy, the Means, Casey and Callie Means, these people that were on Tucker Carlson, his brother and sister, and they're saying that if Ozempic gets its way, and it forces itself on Medicare and Medicaid, and it has horrible side effects. It's devastating. And it's like over $1,000 a shot or something. And they got to take one shot a month. So they'll be paying $12,000 a year for all the people on Medicaid and Medicare. And that comes out to like $3 trillion. And they'll get it in everybody that's obese, right? All these kids. And so it's a horrible thing that could happen. And they're banking on it. Like it's this company that's doing really well. And so he doesn't know the fucking name of the fat shot.
And he called me up and he said, President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me President.
Hey, President, hey, First Lady. Like, that doesn't even make sense that this conversation. Hey, President, he calls me up, President, hey, Prez. Hey, it's me, fat guy who's a brilliant business guy.
It's nice respect, but he's a rough guy, smart guy. Very successful, very rich. I wouldn't even know how we would know this, but because he's got comments. President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. They said,
it's not working. You fat fuck. It's not working, you fat fuck. Holy shit. This is think about this dopey motherfucker here. It's not working. You neurotic fat fuck.
He said, I just paid $88. And in New York, I pay $1,300. What the hell is going on? He said,
Big Pharma is screwing America over. And it's being subsidized by the American government. A lot of these things are on Medicare and Medicaid, and insurance is paying for them. And the American government American people are being fucking gouged. That's what's happening, you fat fuck, right? That's what's happening, right? And
he said, so I checked. And it's the same box, made in the same plant, by the same company. It's the identical pill that I buy.
He's taking a shot that's a pill? Is he taking a shot that's a pill? Like, you can't even keep your fucking story straight. Why not say the guy's name? I mean, the guy must be a billionaire. Some neurotic, overweight businessman that's friends with you. And he's on the fat pill. I mean shot. I mean pill. I don't know. And he's being gouged by when he buys it in America.
In New York. And here I'm paying $88 in London. In New York, I'm paying $1,300. Now, this is a great businessman, but he's not familiar with this crazy situation that we have.
Yeah, somehow Europe is screwing over the pharmaceutical companies. So, I mean, Europe would be more apt to not. I think they take far less pharmaceutical drugs. They have a lot less vaccines they take, and if you raise the prices, it's likely they'll go in another direction, especially for foreign companies. And so, what he's trying to say here is, to bring down American prices, these companies have to overcharge these other countries. But it's not nearly the same because America used so much more pharmaceutical drugs.
But he was stunned. But it was just one of those stories. And I brought it up with the drug companies, represented by somebody who's very, very smart, good person too.
Yeah, the drug companies, those guys are all good people that run the big pharma. This is what this motherfucker just said, right? All you fucking Trumpers that still come here. Like, Jesus Christ. What does he got to tell you? He's a big pharma ass licker. He licks the taint of fucking big pharma, right? He loves big pharma. He did Operation Warp Speed. He got Kennedy himself said that Trump was like anti various things, vax and other things, in his first term. And he liked Kennedy. And they were talking, which we now know because he does like Kennedy. And he was going to implement Kennedy and put him in charge of something. And then Big Pharma gave Trump like $1 billion or something crazy. Or $1 million, I don't know what it was. Something substantial. I mean, Kennedy said this in interviews when he was running independently or as a Democrat at first. And he said Trump was paid this money and then Trump dropped him. And, even though Trump seemed to believe in these things even before, he had questions about the vax before he was even a politician. Like Trump had some of these, remedial beliefs. Like he's not a deep truth seeker, but he has some of these beliefs. But he totally can be bought. And for him to come out and say that big pharma, and he's talking like, listen to this fucking guy here.
I brought it up with the drug companies, represented by somebody who's very, very smart, good person too. And we argued about it for about half hour, and then finally he just said, because they can't justify it, he just said, look, you got me. You got me. I can no longer they've been justifying this crap for years. They said, oh, it's research and development. Well, I said, well, research and development, other countries should pay research and development too. It's for their benefit. It was just one of those things. And the other countries...
You got me? This good guy? So the guy's been screwing America over, but he's a really good guy. He's been overcharging American citizens in America and bullshit research development things. You got me. We've been fucking taking advantage of America. You caught me. You caught me. I've been gouging the American people. I'm still a pretty good guy though, right? Yeah, you're a great guy. Yeah, you've just been taking advantage of America. Well, I do the same thing. So yeah, we both. Trump doesn't the guy's been lying and stealing from the American people, and Trump's like familiar with that. Yeah, we both do. But now that I'm president, you gotta knock it off for a bit. Like fuck.
Countries would set a price, and they'd meet the price, and they'd say, if you don't meet the price, you can't sell it in our country. I said, well, then you walk away, and they'll call you back, and they'll sell it in the country. But now
because you're negotiating that way. Yeah, that's how big pharma works. Big pharma works by pushing their shitty pills, have doctors push it on people through fear and intimidation. Like they go to the doctor and they say, here, I'll give you $50,000 and come speak at some hotel event. We got hookers and coke and shit, Viagra, it's a good thing. So the doctors go there and they get all this money and then they're like, all right, you need to go sell these pills for us. And the doctors push the pills on people and then they have side effects and they push more pills on them. And they become forever patients. And then, and if they're like, oh, this sucks, well, we'll try something else. And before you know it, the person's body's fucked over by big pharma. They're being overcharged and gouged. And so that's the model isn't for that. It's like a drug. This is like a drug dealer, like a street drug dealer, right? Where they get you addicted to something. And so they have to, they give it to you cheap at first and then they charge you a lot of money. And so they don't have anywhere to negotiate. If Britain says, fuck you, you can't sell your drugs here. Then they're like, well, we will sell it for cheap because, we want to get people on these drugs. It's a subscription model. And that's hard to get off them. And so, they're like, they take down your immune system. So now you're on them. You're on other drugs, right? So it's like a gateway into fucking being a forever client.
To do that. So for the first time in many years, we'll slash the cost of prescription drugs, and We will bring fairness to America. Drug prices will come down by much more, really, if you think 59. If you think of a drug that is sometimes 10 times more expensive, it's much more than the 59%. It depends on the way you want to analyze it, but in one way you could analyze it that way. But between 59 and 80, and I guess even 90%. So when I worked so hard in the first term, and if I got prices down, remember I was the only one to ever get prices down for a full year, but I'd get them down like 2%, and I thought it was like a big deal. Well, we're getting them down 60, 70, 80, 90%, but actually more than that if you think about it in the way mathematically.
Like, you're not talking mathematically. Like, mathematically, it's going to be a percentage. And so maybe you're saying that each drug is going to be taken down and more of a percentage or less of a percentage. But, like, you're a fucking moron. Like, that's math. If you think about it mathematically, well, yeah, that's what percentages are. Fuck you talking about? We're talking about numbers. They're mathematics, right? Anything to do with numbers is mathematical.
And Pharma has to say, we're sorry, but we'll not be able to do this any longer to these countries that have been so tough. They've been very tough, nasty.
This is nasty. What are you fucking talking about? They've been very tough and nasty. Like, what are you talking about, right? What are you talking about being nasty? That they negotiated fair prices for their people? They're so nasty over there. They won't let big pharma sell their shitty pills to the fucking people at a higher rate. What an asshole. So what you're admitting to right now is that big pharma has been overcharging America substantially, and the American government, who pays for a lot of this shit that's on Medicare and Medicaid. So all these drugs are now coming down in price up to 90%. And big pharma's still making money, right? They're not fucking doing it for free. And so they're still overcharging us, even at the reduced rates. And so during your first term and during Biden's term, when he was supposedly going after big pharma, every other president before you, the government has let the big pharma overcharge them. And now you're blaming Europe for that? You're blaming, they're screwing over the big pharma and passing the savings on to themselves, and big pharma can't even, and we have to subsidize big pharma because they're big meanies over there. They negotiate, they're good negotiators over there. They're big fucking meanies. They won't let big pharma overcharge them. What the fuck are you talking about, you piece of shit? Most of these companies are European, lots of them, right? The ones that you got all this stuff that happened with fucking Operation Warp Speed that is doing so much damage to people. You fuck, right? You piece of shit. Dumbass piece of shit, right? He's on the side of big pharma, and he's also on the side of repealing habeas corpus for bullshit reasons. And you guys, the fucking Trumpers, are still on board with this, you fucking fake-ass patriots, right? What are you talking about? Like, you want a guy who licks big pharma's taint and fucking repeals habeas corpus? That's what you want as a president? You think he's doing a good job? You think he's not fucking betraying you or lying to you, right? I mean, we'll see what the savings are, but he's admitting that big pharma's been screwing over America. You got me. This guy's a nice guy, but he's been fucking price gouging the American people for bullshit fucking harmful medications.
This is an extraordinary day. This is an issue that, I grew up in the Democratic Party, and every major Democratic leader for 20 years has been making this promise to the American people. This was the fulcrum of Bernie Sanders' runs for presidency, that he was going to eliminate this discrepancy between Europe and the United States. But as it turns out, none of them were doing it. It's one of these promises that politicians make to their constituents, knowing that they'll never have to do it. And the reason they'll never have to do it is because they know that Congress is controlled in so many ways by the pharmaceutical industry. There's at least one pharmaceutical lobbyist for every congressman, every senator on Capitol Hill, and every member of the Supreme Court.
But they're good guys, though, right? They're good guys. They just screw America over, but they're good guys.
estimates 3. Pharmaceutical companies, the industry itself spends 3 times what the next largest lobbyist spends on lobbying. So this was an issue that people talked about, but nobody wanted to do anything because it was radioactive. They knew you couldn't get it by Congress. We now have a president who is a man of his word, who has the courage. President Trump was taking money from the pharmaceutical industry too. I think they gave you $100 million, but he can't be bought.
$100 million, right?
Like most of the politicians in this country. And he is standing here for the American people. I don't know what, there's writers like Lord Elizabeth Warren.
I don't understand how this works. He took $100 million and now how did this fucking come about, really?
Robert Reich, who are saying that President Trump is on this side of the oligarchs. There has never been a president more willing to stand up to the oligarchs.
But he just was licking Big Pharma's balls during the whole speech and blaming it on Europe for not wanting to be overcharged. Those guys don't want to be screwed over by Big Pharma. They're fucking vicious and nasty over there.
President Donald Trump. And I'm very, very proud of you, Mr. President, for your courage, I'll say, because I don't want to be crude, your intestinal fortitude, your stiff spine, and your
stiff spine? What are you talking about? Dick pills? Stiff dick pills and fat pills?
Your willingness to stand up for the American people.
I want to get your reaction to the president's announcement on cutting prescription drug prices, Senator.
Well, President Trump just said that he's the one that improved Obamacare, which is actually flat out wrong. He tried over and over to repeal Obamacare when he was president the first time, and House Republicans are moving ahead this week with their bill, which President Trump's asking for, that would cut millions of Americans off of health care. In the last administration, Democrats worked hard to pass legislation.
Okay, so you're not happy with him reducing drug prices? So you got Big Pharma. You're a Big Pharma taint liquor as well. Okay, so I looked it up. AstraZeneca, Merck, and Pfizer. Pfizer, of course, is from Germany. AstraZeneca is from United Kingdom, and Merck is from New Jersey. And so, two of the three companies are that Trump pushed. Of course, Johnson & Johnson is also American, I believe. At least, it was an American company. But he was pushing these drugs that were not, these companies that are not American companies. Anyways, this is Roger Goodell. And so Trump is doing something with the NFL. I don't know what it is, but this is where he talks about reopening Alcatraz.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. About the draft, and I would like to upcome an event that it was already mentioned here, the World Cup. Although United States, the passion here is football. For the World Cup next year, how do you envision, Mr. President, this event here in the United States?
It'd be fantastic. I worked very hard to get the
Okay, that's the thing here.
World Cup, and we have something that it's such an honor to have that. I think it'll be great for everybody. Great friends of the location. I have no doubt they'll do a special job. Yeah, please.
Can you explain a little bit about how you would implement tariffs on the film industry, kind of how that would work?
Well, that's a different story, but our film industry has been decimated by other countries.
What do you call it?
Our film industry has been decimated.
Film industry?
By other countries taking him out, and also by incompetence, like in Los Angeles, the governor is a grossly incompetent man. He's just allowed it to be taken away from, Hollywood. Hollywood doesn't do very much of that business. They have the nice, good situation. So we're going to meet with the industry. I want to make sure they're happy with it.
Okay, somewhere in here you're just going to ask about Alcatraz.
Because I wouldn't let it be built. And then when Biden got in, he allowed it to be built. And it's very interesting. But I think Russia, with the price of oil right now, oil's gone down. I think.
Let me find the Alcatraz thing here.
the fact that it was put out on the White House account, even though it was AI generated, it was a joke, it was a meme, does it at all diminish the substance of the official White House account to have it go out on that particular channel?
Wait, let's see here.
About it, I just saw it last evening. Actually, my wife thought it was cute. She said, "Isn't that nice?" President that for 3 years didn't speak to Putin, and
he doesn't talk to Putin.
It all shouldn't have happened. This is a war that should have never happened, and you're going to be very disappointed when you find out the real number of people that were killed. It's far greater, many times greater, I believe, but far greater than
people aren't going to give a shit about
the
that.
numbers that you're putting out. It's a very, very deadly, horrible war. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some Catholics were not so happy about the image of you looking like the Pope.
Oh, I see. You mean they can't take a joke? You don't mean the Catholics.
They can't take a joke.
You mean the fake news media?
The fake news media didn't like me as Pope.
Not the Catholics loved it. I had nothing to do with it. Somebody made up a picture of me dressed like the Pope, and they put it out on the internet. That's not me that did it. I have no idea where it came from. Maybe it was AI, but I know nothing.
It was 100% AI. Like, that's what a dope he is. Like, this is how disconnected he is. It was 100% AI. Like, everybody here probably knows that image was generated by AI. We now know what AI, we look at something and go, oh, that's AI, right? Like the Gaza thing that he put out, right? And, it's not something that, like, I'm all for a joke, and I love it when he disrespects the institution of the presidency. Because I know it's just icky. It's just all fake, right? All the things I said earlier. It's performative. And so this is something I don't mind, but the stupidity of his arguments is bad. Like, I thought the Pope thing, it represents shitty stuff, like with Trump. The Catholic Church is a bad institution, and it's, it's counterproductive to the connection, severing the connection to the divinity within you, which is my primary thing I talk about here. Connecting to God inside yourself in a legitimate way, not some bullshit crazy way, because it's always it's a delicate thing. You have your inner voice, you have, people have multiple voices inside of them. People are like you have all your complex ego, and then you have the divinity that's in you in your soul. And it's a difficult process with how mentally fucked people are and how gross they are to get connected to God. That's why there's extensive cleaning that goes on in the Sajmark system. And so to facilitate stronger and stronger connection to the divinity within you. And these religious institutions are doing everything in their power to prevent that from happening. They want to have that power to say they're the only people that can connect to God, and they tell you what God's saying. And so, it's my primary thing. And the Catholic Church and these other institutions are, powerful, gross, anti-God institutions. Demonic, right? And this whole thing that he said he wanted to be Pope, it's just all greasy. But for him to come up here and just not know where it comes from and not take any responsibility for the outrage that was going to happen, right? Of course there's going to be outrage.
Nothing about it. I just saw it last evening. Actually, my wife thought it was cute. She said, "Isn't that nice?"
My question
Your wife thought it was cute. Thanks. Oh, your wife thought it was cute.
Actually, I would not be able to be married, though. That would be a lot. I'd have to the best of my knowledge, popes aren't big on getting married, are they?
They're not. Popes don't get married, do they? They just have, they just abuse kids. They're not the marrying type. Like, what the fuck? What about priests? Do they get married? Like, he's a Catholic, right? He grew up as a Catholic.
Oh, no. I think it's the fake news media that, they...
Fake news. When in doubt, blame the European Union and the fake news media.
The question, though, sir, was about the fact that it was put out on the White House account, even though it was AI generated, it was a joke, it was a meme. Does it at all diminish the substance of the official White House account?
They put it out on the official White House account. Not on Donald Trump's personal goofy Instagram, on the official White House account. They put which again makes me happy because it's all a fucking joke. But for his, I mean, like he's disrespecting the presidency, the office of the presidency, which most right-wing people care about. They're more into these things, the tradition of the historic tradition of America. Like right-wing people are more likely to go to like Thomas Jefferson's house or, go to Washington, D.C. They're like more into they have reverence for the government, right? It's an extension of their Christian beliefs, that there's a tie between Christianity and the government, and there's something to be revered. And he's just disrespecting the shit out of it, and they're lapping it up because they love Trump, and they don't really, all of a sudden they don't care about these things, right?
But go out on that particular
Give me a break. It was just somebody did it in fun. It's fine. Have to have a little fun.
Well, are you gonna put like AI generated dick pics on the White House official White House most social media?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Tell me about the program that's just been introduced to give undocumented immigrants living in the United States
About me?
$1,000 to self-deport. Can you just tell us a little bit?
Oh, the new program.
The new
Yeah.
program.
We have millions of people that have come into this country illegally through an administration that didn't know what they were doing. They didn't have a clue, and now we.
They're pretty clear. It's just Biden. It's Biden's fault.
It's very unfair what's happening because the court system is being. It's very unfair. We have to get them out fast. These are bad people. These are people.
We gotta get them out fast. We can't get them out fast enough. Somewhere here is Alcatraz.
Flight back to where they came from, and they have a period of time. And if they make it, we're going to work with them so that maybe someday, with a little work, they can come back in if they're good people, if they're the kind of people that we want in our company.
Yeah, sure. They'll never get back in.
And we're going to try, and if we think they're good, they have, the people we want in our country, they're going to come back into our country. We'll give them a little easier route. But if they don't work, and if we take them out after the date, then they're never coming back.
They're never coming back.
How many groups could lose $5 billion a day? If you lose $5 billion one day, that's the end of that company, right? You're fired.
Okay.
He says, you're fired. Get out of here. So we essentially did that, and we have it down to a very low number. We're doing really well, really well. Yeah.
How did you decide to reopen Alcatraz? Can you walk us through that decision?
Did I say what?
To reopen Alcatraz, how will you use it? How did you come up with the idea?
Well, I guess I was supposed to be a movie maker. We started with the movie making, and we'll end. I mean, it represents something very strong, very powerful in terms of law and order. Our country needs law and order. Alcatraz is, I would say, the ultimate, right? Alcatraz, Sing Sing and Alcatraz, the movies. But
the movies, right? Because you saw it in movies when you were a kid. Like the movie The Rock and other Alcatraz stuff. You saw it. And now you're like, oh, I'm all about that? What are you talking about? Like, this is fucking real life here, bro. It's a fucking historic museum. It was very hard to upkeep because it's a rock in the middle of the ocean, so you have to bring over by boat all the things to repair it. And, like, all the stuff that people have to go in there to repair the thing. I mean, it's not practical. It's an island, like there's a rock out in the island, right? Like a big giant rock sticking out of the island, sticking out of a rock island with nothing on it, and you have to bring in everything, water and all that shit, right? It's not sustainable, and I don't even know how they must run cables under the ocean to power the thing, and though it's just it's not practical, right? And like they have all these mega prisons that they have built here for this kind of shit. And then, of course, these El Salvadorian prisons that they want to put Americans in. Like, it's just a silly little idea. Like, this is like what a king does. Like, bad ideas, and everybody says, oh, well, what a brilliant idea. And they just go with it. No, you're a dumbass. He's a fucking moron. He's completely, he's stupid. Like, he's just stupid.
It's right now a museum, believe it or not. A lot of people go there. It housed the most violent criminals in the world, and nobody ever escaped. One person almost got there, but they, as you know the story, they found his clothing rather badly ripped up, and it was a lot of shark bites, a lot of problems. Nobody's ever.
It's a guy. Was a guy on Ozempic? Was he here?
Escaped from Alcatraz and just represented something strong having to do with law and order. We need law and order in this country. And so we're going to look at it. Some of the people up here are going to be working very hard on that. And we had a little conversation. I think it's going to be very interesting. We'll see if we can bring it back in large form, add a lot. But I think it represents something. Right?
It represents shit. I mean, like, fucking, it doesn't represent anything to the youth of America. There's a movie called The Rock, Escape from the Rock, Alcatraz. It was pro-prisoner escape. And, shark-infested water, sure. But it's the currents that get you. I mean, it's like fucking, they have strong currents over there. I mean, it's just, And then what do? You swim up on shore with fucking wearing prison shit? Like, they're gonna pick you up. They're gonna go, oh, somebody's swimming ashore. And it's then they're coming up.
Right now it's a big hulk that's sitting there rusting and rotting.
But it's a museum. It's rusted and rotty, but it's a museum.
You look at it, it's sort of you saw that picture that was put out. It's sort of amazing, but it sort of represents something that's both horrible and beautiful and strong and miserable, weak. It's got a lot of qualities that are interesting, and I think.
What are you talking about? Like, this is your fucking president, right? As bad as an embarrassment Joe Biden was, but this guy.
They make a point. Okay, are you guys okay? I want to just say that it's such an honor to be up here with my friends because this is a group of people that have done an amazing job, and all we can do, Muriel and I, is give them the greatest sight there is, I think, that I've ever seen for something like this. And I did very well in the real estate business. I think this is the greatest site there is anywhere in the world for exactly what you guys are doing.
This is the NFL. So the guy's just an ass clown, right? I mean, that thing that he did with Big Pharma, like, in a way is positive, but, not really. Anyways, I mean, it's a positive in the sense he's reducing the prices, but that means that more people are going to be on pharmaceutical drugs. They're just going to pay less for them. But, like we know, I cover this all the time, all the side effects of the bullshit, right? It's not to me, it's a horrible model of how to do, healthcare. Anyways, there's another thing here. I have just two more things to show you here, then I'll tell you, why this all matters.
The president also told me that next month he's planning a military parade celebrating the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army that also falls on his 79th birthday.
We're going to have a big, beautiful parade.
A military parade?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We're going to celebrate our military. We have the greatest military in the world.
What's the price tag? Do you
People, peanuts compared to the value of doing.
Peanuts compared to the value. Defense officials say the estimated could cost as high as $45 million. That's not peanuts. It has no value. Parades suck, right?
We have the greatest missiles in the world. We have the greatest submarines in the world. We have the greatest army tanks in the world. We have the greatest weapons in the world. And we're going to celebrate it.
The president
bring a submarine down Pennsylvania Avenue, right? So, you're talking about unnecessary spending. And parades, there's nothing more unnecessary than a parade. If your team wins the championship, then sure. You have a big parade. I guess there's some kind of post-victory celebration. I don't know other things than that. And I don't know how young people feel about parades. I mean, parades are stupid. Like, I was a kid, and I'm like, why are we doing this? I went to a number of parades, and then every Thanksgiving, there was, Macy's Day Parade, these parades you'd watch. Now, they have to close off the streets, and usually they're going down Main Street where there are businesses and things like this. And, the business, I guess, can stay open. There's some people, restaurants and things like whatever. But, they used to have these big-ass floats. I guess they still do. And they're silly. Like, given the technology we have and all the stuff, and especially these low budget parades, you know, they're just gaudy. You know, we saw this with the royal family and their parades and all these things. You know, it's just stuff that isn't impressive anymore. You know, if somebody dresses up in a military uniform with a lot of medals and a lot of, you know, flair and bling and, you know, all this stuff and uncomfortable Michael Jackson type wear, you know, these coats, it's just not impressive. You know, it used to be like you'd have simple people and you throw on some war paint, you put some feathers in your hair, and, you know, to acknowledge that the chief was more fancy than everybody else, right? You know, simple people would see, all right, look at that great, you know, person with all the bullshit on him. But now, like, all that stuff doesn't impress people. It's annoying, you know, if you have to get downtown or something, there's a fucking parade, right? And when it costs $45 million and you're putting all these missiles and shit out, you know, like, we know we have the number one military, at least that, like, on paper. And, you know, until that is taken away, which it will be, everyone kind of knows it. And a parade is like, he wanted to do this with a new North Carolina style military parade for his inauguration. Now it's happening on his birthday. So, like, it's also that, right, for Trump. But, you know, no one's impressed by that shit, right? It's like Trump is caught back to when he was a child. Like Alcatraz and parades and, you know, things he talks about, dolls and pencils and, you know, all these things that he brings up are, you know, back when he was a kid, when manufacturing was big and all these things. You know, he hasn't matriculated into the modern day world in America. He still thinks that, you know, and somebody who's that outdated, he doesn't understand technology and AI and all this shit. Like, he's just, you know, he's an old person caught in the past. Make America great again. It wasn't ever great. Like, I mean, it's great now, you know, like, whatever. You can always call things great. Like, he slaps positive adjectives on everything. Like, he says he's got the greatest people and greatest administration. He's got a bunch of dopes, right? Get rid of frickin' habeas corpus and, you know, all these things, right? Due process, bring in martial law. Like, he thinks those things are great. Like, he's just, you know, it's great if it works for him. He's a child surrounded by, yes, people, take liquor, children. And, you know, it's so degraded. Let me show you one more example of this.
The Department of Homeland Security is in talks with a reality TV show producer about a game show where immigrant contestants would compete for U.S. citizenship.
Holy shit, right? Now, for Trump, who is kind of on a game show himself with The Apprentice, and, you know, him being back in the past, like all these decadent, you know, like the Hunger Games and the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from when I was younger, The Running Man, and these post-apocalyptic dystopian worlds where they play these bizarre games, right? Now, game shows are another things that shouldn't exist. Like game shows just, they've run their course. They're no longer. I mean, I guess they get some ratings, but, you know, there's actually like real good content out there. Like, there's quality content. There's stuff that is just much better than what we used to have, because there's so much more content out there. You know, I went from, when I was a kid, there was like 5 channels, 3 major networks, PBS, then Fox came along. I don't know what else there was. And, you know, that was it. You had 5 fucking channels. You had to get up and turn the channel, and you watch whatever was there. You didn't get to fast forward through shit or skip commercials. And you'd sit mesmerized in front of this TV that was shaped like a tube. You know, they called it the boob tube, right? It was like a, you know, like it's a rounded, you know, like a light bulb, like these big light bulbs, like floodlights. And, you know, our TVs were black and white. We were like some of the last people to get color TVs. My dad was like, loved TV, but it's cheap. You know, I remember listening to a baseball game on a radio. I was a Cincinnati Reds fan. A little kid, I was listening to the Mets game that we somehow got on the radio. And, you know, I'm listening to baseball games, sitting there listening on fucking radio like it's 1920. But, you know, like TV was limited. And then when I was in high school, we got cable. And we had this box, and it had a long cord on it. And it was a big-ass box, the size of it was probably 12 inches, 2 inches, 3 inches high. And it had 3 rows of numbers. And there was this lever that you would push on you would put it on the row of numbers you wanted. So, like, it would activate the row of numbers. And so you had the row of numbers, probably 10 numbers, like there's 30 numbers total. Buttons, they were buttons. And you press the button with the lever, and you'd switch channels that way. And it was like a fucking breakthrough. I mean, it was almost like a remote control. Except it was big as a fucking shoebox. And, we had cable TV, and we now had like 30 channels. And like, you'd have like movie channels and shit. Like, where you could watch just fucking movies with no commercial. It was like a miracle. And then like video games came out, Pong and these other things. And, those of us who were, people my age will remember this stuff. And then computers were the size of refrigerators. We had a computer the size of 2 refrigerators. And it didn't do shit. Like, it was all, I mean, there was no interface. There was no any of this stuff. And, over time we saw this develop, and it's developed so quickly to where now an average person can make content on their cell phone. I mean, everybody can do that. They can just you can make content on your cell phone, and then you have a platform to post shit, right? And so, like, there's so much more available out there. Like, we all know this, but people who didn't grow up when I grew up, that it's incredible the amount of content that's out there, right? And so you don't need shit like game shows and parades. Game shows were like, there were 3, you could watch like a game show or a soap opera or something on PBS, right? Like some fucking Sesame Street bullshit. Like, these were your options. Like, that's all there was, right? And, they were competing against doing real shit. Like, TV was competing against real life. And so they had to make it interesting enough. They realized it was hypnotic. There's whatever that, there's this book that came out. I can't remember the name of it right now. But the guy realized that the way TV affected people's brain patterns, they could affect elections and pretty much everything else because people were in a hypnotized state. It came out in the 30s or 40s, wherever this TV first came out. And they realized TV was a fucking monster in terms of mind control of people. Here it is, Edward Bernays' Propaganda. Now, this used to be Truther 101. Old school truthers, was talked about all the time. The book Propaganda by Edward Bernays explores the power of public relations and persuasions in shaping public opinion and behavior. Bernays, considered a pioneer in public relations, argues that the consciousness, intelligent manipulation of organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element of democratic society. The book examines how these ideas are spread and perceptions are crafted by media, governments, and corporations, revealing the techniques used to sway public consciousness. All these things that we know are happening now. And we don't even know because it's just like it's such a hypnotic, powerfully, demonstrative way of, doing all these things, right? That we were unaware of. And so there's more of it. Here's a more detailed look at the book's key elements and arguments. Engineering of consent. But Bernays coined the term, described the process of using propaganda techniques to influence public opinion and behavior. Public opinion and mass media. The book explores the complex interplay between public opinion, mass media, and the orchestration of public consciousness. Ethical implications. Bernays also discusses the ethical implications of using propaganda techniques, particularly the potential for manipulation and control. In historical context, the book provides insight into the historical context of propaganda, including its use during World War I and Cold War. Bernays' ideas remain relevant in understanding dynamics of modern media and the ongoing importance of transparent, and ethical communication practices. And so, this idea that your brain goes from the active beta state to the passive alpha state, where, you know, you're subconscious and you're so influenced, you go into this hypnotic state, right? And you're so influenced by all of these, you know, elements. There was, you know, I worked at this activity center that was in the town of Los Alamos, which is a weird-ass town, right? The town has more PhD per capitas that they stopped having. They said, let's make it so we only call real doctors, medical doctors, because everyone's a doctor there, right? They're all scientific people with PhDs. And their kids were all fucked up. But it was right on top of Los Alamos. No, that was it was right on top of this place called Espanola, which was the highest per capita heroin deaths at the time, where there's a lot of like pseudo gangs and stuff. Really tough town, and you know, it was, and there was like an influence, and the Los Alamos has built these cool things called mesas. I mean, when I first moved out to New Mexico, in that area, and I went to places, I'm like, there's a place called the Bisti, which is like a Yes, the band Yes album cover. They used to have these cool album covers. They had these like mushroom, like you know, whatever it is, like the rock formations in this place. But the Bisti was a national park that the last people that had been there were like a week or two before me and my family went there. And it was one of the coolest places that had the worst vibrational energy. It must have been like a nuclear bomb went off there or something some ancient time ago. There's no life. Like I saw one fly. It's completely dry. There's no water. And just these cool, you know, like Utah, but like dull. You know, not the beautiful red rock, but like these cool, you know, just visually it was just like being on another planet. But like it was depressed. Like our energy was being sucked from us. My kids were young and we had to get out of there. I'm like, oh my God, this place is like it has this negative energy, right? But you know, it's a like a really neat place. And Los Alamos was like this crazy town. And there was this kid, his dad came in one day, and his dad was like one of the weirdest people ever, some scientist. And this kid was always picked on by other kids, and he was really weird. But he would come in and he'd watch TV. And he'd have one of those winter coats on where they had like the sort of fur around the collar, and you could make them really small. Like you could like make the hole where your hood really small. And he'd do that so he could block out all the bullshit, because kids would be throwing stuff at him and picking on him. And there'd be a certain point we'd have to turn the TV off. And there's this guy that was like an ex-football player that worked there, big guy. And we used to laugh because we'd go to turn the TV off, and whoever turned the TV off, the other person would come in and watch the kid, and he would ball his fists up, and he would go, "Rrrr." He just let out this like primal scream kind of thing. He didn't know it was like just this anger at the TV going off, because he was so hypnotized by it, right? And that was just TV. You know, of course, now we know about all these other technologies where you walk in a room and people are on the phone and they don't even know you were in the room, right? They're completely oblivious to it. They're totally absorbed in the devices. So think about that propaganda book that was written, when was it written? 1928. And so you think about the dumbing down of America. Well, that was it, right? They turned people into zombie-like sheep. And like TV, like I said, used to compete with the real world. And so they had to make it interesting enough. But these game shows and these things, you got to understand the simplicity and the unsophistication and the lack of cynicism of these people who are farmers and immigrants and, you know, simple people who would watch this shit, right? And the fact that it's still being watched is crazy with all the stuff that's happened. But people are so dumbed down now. Like they're just less conscious. Now, the people who were farmers and, you know, they had a lot of like, you know, people who did different kind of work. They were way more, they had a way bigger set of skills. Aboriginal people, you know, I talk about how there was a time where they tricked people out of the rural areas, the villages and the tribes, or forced them out of the tribes and villages and pushed them into cities where they only had to work 8 hours a day and they had one specialized skill. And as soon as that happened, you lost all those abilities. And now with a cell phone, I resisted getting a cell phone for years. And whenever I move somewhere, I have a good memory and I have good perceptual abilities, and I'm dyslexic, so I recognize patterns. But most people can do this on some level. We used to have to make a mental map and just memorize the area in which we lived. And there'd be like a big city you drive to, and you'd have, working knowledge how to go around to that city. And there was no cell phone. Like, you had to figure things out. You're in the middle of a fucking highway. You have to read exit signs, and you had to come up with a mental plan. And when you went on a long trip, you had these things called triptychs, which would, tell you it was like this thing you'd flip over as soon as it covered like 120 miles. It was like a thin notepad. And, you had these things that you would do, when we had a computer, but we didn't have cell phones, I used to go to MapQuest and print out a bunch of sheets and follow that path, like I made my own triptych, right? And so, you had to have a different level of navigation and geographical sites, and your consciousness was just different. And now you can just program into your phone. Like I still don't know the area in which I live so great. I mean, around my house, sure. But like I just, you lose those abilities. And these kids have lost all these abilities and are so much more dependent. Of course, AI now, they won't be able to do shit, right? And so you have like a real dumbing down of the population, the idiocracy, on so many different ways, in terms of skills, in terms of, mental abilities, and all of these things. And the more technology does for you, the less you have to do for yourself. And so, like I was saying, people aren't going to do manufacturing jobs in America, like silly, stupid shit like that, right? You'd have to be desperate, because the jobs that are service-oriented are way less taxing on your body and less difficult. I mean, they don't pay as well, but they're not as brutal. But those jobs pay a lot more than manufacturing's doing jobs do in China. So it's a whole different thing, right? But all the things that you see with Trump, it's childish stuff. It's old school things, and it's embarrassingly bad. And it's totally aimed at, people who are not intelligent, it's a consciousness thing. There's people who are book smart in school, good at school, and they might have a pretty good memory, and they have good study skills, but mostly they've bought into the system. Like, they really want good grades. Like, if you really want good grades, you can have average IQ and get really good grades, and you can work real hard. It's really about your effort and your work to be smart at school, and you have to have the right kind of. But if you believe in it, like if you don't believe in school and you think school is stupid, you think you're being indoctrinated, like there's something off about school, it's harder for you to get good grades because you don't give a shit about it, right? And maybe at some point you realize, I got to get a job and these things, you got to get into college, like your family pressures you. And so you put more of an effort into it. But, I was getting an F in U.S. history. It was the only class I took with my best friend in high school. And so we joked around constantly. And, he was into school and his dad was pressuring him. But I didn't give a shit because my dad was a guidance counselor, but we didn't ever talk about my future. I was just clueless. I was in a Rahu period, during that time, the Vedic astrology I've talked about in the past. A time where you're kind of out of it. And I was smoking pot a lot, and I realized, like, I was getting an F the first semester and halfway through the second semester. And it was a mandatory class to graduate. And I was a junior, and I would have to take that class again. I'm like, holy shit. And I liked the teacher. The teacher and I joked around, but I just didn't fucking participate. And so, and so I just paid attention. I got all A's, right, on every test. And I didn't even study. Like, I just paid attention in class. Like, I just started to listen, started joking around, and, like fucking, and, the teacher's like, why didn't you do this all year? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, fucking, I was just fucking, I was a chucklehead. But, like, you don't need to be, like, really smart to do well in school. And so, higher level courses, sure. People who get, like, go into physics and calculus, and there's things like that. But even that, there doesn't mean that they have a higher level consciousness. There's people who just, they're older souls or they've been around longer, and whatever it is, they can understand things with critical thought without really having to have things explained to them. And, they just have a better sense of things, right? And that's about maybe 10% of the population, maybe, 30% of the population, depending. You have to have the proper nutrition and things too, and you have to grow up with, enough intellectual stimulation. But, people who are able to really, because there's lots of people in the truth community who think they're using critical thinking skills, and they're kind of trying, but they just don't have, they don't have the talent for it, right? And they're just bad at it. And, there are a lot of dumb people that'll follow them, but they're not, they're just not good at it. But there are people, a small percentage of the population, that can see through all the bullshit, right? A lot of them become like comedians or, whatever it is, right? People, angry people, it's just people who are evolved more. It's, again, it isn't intelligence. It's, being able to penetrate through the bullshit, right? And, it's a consciousness level. And it comes mostly, the highest level of this is a spiritual person who connects to divinity. And so those people are disregarded in modern civilization. Like, they're just seen as nuisances. They either are compromised and they're part of they work to indoctrinate other people. They become Judas goats that lead people down the wrong path because it's like with sheep. Sheep are stupid and they know that goats are smarter, and they'll just follow the goat, right? Because they know goats are trying to survive as well, so the goat, leads them. And then the goat's trained by the farmer to lead the sheep into slaughter, right? So it's a Judas goat. And so, there's that kind of a thing. But the people who don't buy into society and see through it, they're just marginalized to whatever extent. And there's no attempt to try to win these people over. There's gifted and talented people, and they either buy in and, they get bought off and they shill for the beast, or they, become disgruntled and antisocial people, and they're ostracized in whatever way possible. And you have, many of these people in the truth community now have audiences, but not significant enough, and they can't really change the culture or do anything because of all of these things, right? But in all that, right, in everything that I'm saying here, there is the fundamental issue at play. There is, in the propaganda and all these things, because everything's now dumbed down, and they want stupider people of lower consciousness, right? Where, they want addicts, and they want people who are desperate. They want people who are, their prana level has been dropped by, bad medicines, and, by their physical bodies have been weakened, and they're unnatural, and they're easily controlled. And eventually they have to depopulate because these people have no value. Like, they can't really do anything of substance. They can do menial jobs that are available in, like, America, particularly these societies where, people can do, like, work at Wendy's or fucking, I don't know, whatever, like, other kind of jobs there are like that, right? That don't take a lot of physical effort, and are, the kind of jobs that you do when you're in high school. And so there's lots of people, that's all they can do. They can't think for themselves. And these kids growing up on the internet, they have no stamina, no work ethic. And so, and I'm not sure what the plan, eventually the plan has to be just to depopulate, right? That's part of it. But, the original break from all this stuff, like I talk about being lured off the farm where they said, hey, you can give up all these skills and you're never going to need them again. Well, now you need them. Because, they had these things called victory gardens in World War II before I was born, where people had to grow food, and women had to go into the workforce because all the men were off fighting, all the farmers and the men were off fighting World War II, right? They were all, drafted. They were all part of the war effort. And, that's back when people bought into that shit. Like, now people won't be. And that was part of that propaganda movie and the rest of it. But, the number one thing was to disconnect people from God. Because the smartest people, the most evolved people, not smartest, but most evolved, They have a relationship to God, and God communicates to them and directs them. And they don't do stupid shit because, you know, they feel bad about it. They have empathy and they have compassion. And so if you're a spiritual person, you're not going to be compromised by a bunch of, you know, flashing lights and bells and whistles and shit. You're not going to be pulled into all this kind of stuff, right? You're not going to be pulled in by whores and fucking, you know, whatever, all these kind of things. You're going to reject them. Like, you might try some things out and you'll be like, well, this is bad. God doesn't like this, right? And you feel God, in the divinity within you is like, no, like, what the fuck are you doing, right? And you can't do it. You feel bad about it. And, you know, that's the first part. The other part is nature, your connection to nature. And then there's a connection to your family in the village where, you know, people would shame you when you did stupid shit, right? Like they would, you know, you'd be ostracized. Like you were, you know, if you went to the dark side, you started doing shit like this, there would be, you know, you'd be cut out. And it used to matter to you because you need your village to survive. And so all those things have to be decimated. And religions was what did the deed on your connection to God. They promised some bullshit thing about heaven or hell in Christianity and all these other religions. It's just some bullshit thing that you can't get. And they use some like good spiritual words from Jesus, some good principles, but it's really not anything. Like, because it's just a front for the, you know, indoctrination to sell you something that doesn't work for you, and it disconnects you from having a living relationship with God. That's why we say only spirituality will save this world. Because spirituality helps people rise to a higher level, where everything else out there in society is pulling you down to a lower level. And so to get back to where we need to be, there has to be a deep connection to God. And there has to be something where people realize in a scorched earth, like a literal scorched earth situation, wow, we fucked up, and beseeching God for forgiveness. You know, that's the Whispers of the Brighter World message I read recently. And so, like, that's what has to happen. Like, that's the only thing that's going to solve the situation, because we're all compromised in the sense of, if they told you all the things you need to give up to make this system right, they went to each person individually and they said, all right, these are the things we're going to take away. And these are the things you're going to have to do in terms of growing food, in terms of, you know, farm life, in terms of community, the people around you. And, you know, you're going to have to deal with all these people. And, you know, a bunch of people who themselves are going to be struggling with the new deal they're going to get. Like, first of all, giving up all these things. And second of all, what you have to do now in terms of what's expected of you. And we've become so weak and entitled, and there's all these natural programs inside you. Like, you have a farmer inside of you. You have a hunter inside of you, right? Ancestrally and in past lives. You have those programs. Like, you know how to do, like, you have a father, and you have to, like a father program or a mother program. It's just waiting for you to have kids. And when it kicks in, like, it's like, oh, wow, I already have some of this knowledge. You have some internalized stuff that's just waiting to, you know, flower in the right environment. Already some skaras that I talk about that are inside of you that are waiting to flower, good things and bad things, abilities and liabilities that you have inside of you. And it's just waiting to flower and be actualized, right? And so everybody has that stuff in them. But in modern society, this stuff is all like atrophied. It's all in a dormant state, and there's nothing pulling it out of you. And as you get older, it's harder physically to adjust to farm life, to be an agrarian, to be in a village, right? To be in a family. Like, people are in families, but they're not in families. And all the bullshit that goes with it. And people don't have love and care for each other and sacrifice for each other. And so, you know, telling people who are so totally selfish and totally weak and totally entitled to do those things, it just won't work. So it's going to have to be like a fucking, like, cold turkey. Your lifestyle's done. World War III, fucking, you know, everybody's dying, zombie apocalypse type situation, for people to embrace these old ways. And the majority of people just won't make the cut. If you're older, you won't make it. And if you're, depending on what you are as a person, you won't make the cut. But it isn't just about doing this work, because a lot of people who are not that intelligent can do farm work, and some people live in rural areas. They have more skills. They're hunters, and they have outdoor skills. But you have to find a way to connect to God in a deeper way as a mandatory requirement for survival in the future. Like, this is the plan that was, talked about in the Sajmark system. A plan where everything changes on a spiritual level, where now when you're a sociopath and you're selfish, you can do real well. You can become a corporate CEO, you can become fucking president, you can become anything, right? If you're really selfish and narcissistic. But in the future, if you're that way, there'll be so many consequences coming your way, beating the shit out of you, that you can't survive that way. Right now, being selfless, if you're a good person, the life gets sucked out of you by all the other people that are taking advantage of you. If you're a hardworking person that wants to serve other people, and you look at people with a positive attitude, and you're out there helping them and doing your best, people will just fucking take advantage of you and drain you and fucking turn you into a fucking vampire, ghoulish zombie. Because, like, everyone's like, oh my God, look at this person. Well, let's take advantage of them. This person, this naive person, this good person. Let's take everything. Let's steal from them. And so, like, if you're a good person, you get the shit kicked out of you, and like you get hurt. Your heart's open, and you just get fucking plundered by all the scummy people out there. But in the future, that won't be the case. Like, things will change in such a way that good people will be rewarded, hard work will be rewarded, and selflessness will be rewarded, and all the other bad qualities will be punished. And a person who's a negative person just won't be able to survive. You'll need to work hard, you'll need to participate, you'll need to be cooperative with other people. And so, there has to be a shift, and when that shift happens, then, the collapse happens, right? When it's in the process of happening. But right now, it's the opposite of that. And people like Trump are out there just taking advantage of people who are just too stupid and too desperate to see for themselves that we're fucked, right? And nobody wants to admit we're fucked, because when you're fucked, like, it's, as soon as you admit it, then it happens, right? Like, as soon as people say we're fucked, you look at your paper money or your digital money, and you're like, this doesn't have any value. And next thing you know, it's like everybody's fighting over a piece of fighting with rats over a piece of stale McDonald's roll in a trash can because there's no food and people don't have any skills. And so, like, there's no backup plan. It's not like we say, all right, let's reject this modern day economy and modern day world to do something else. We don't have the capacity to do that because we've given up our skill set and our abilities by buying into this system. And so, this is where we are. And I've talked about this in multiple videos, but it's very prevalent now. And so, I'm not going to have the kind of, people aren't going to celebrate that idea. I talk about this as the basis. When I first started a homestead, I knew how screwed we were, because it's not that you don't have these abilities inside you to milk cows and to grow food, but it's hard as fuck. Nature sometimes is against you, and it's a big learning curve. And it was so much easier when your grandfather and your parents taught you how to do it. And there are people who grew up with that, and they have an advantage. But there's more to that, because there's the spiritual aspect. And most people don't have that, who are, in these stupid churches and religions that disconnect you from the divinity within you, which is another aspect of this. And so it's so foreign for us, to reclaim all that is extraordinarily difficult and scary. And what you have to give up to do that, and what people are going to be forced to give up, nobody wants to hear that shit. Like, they still want to believe in us winning the lotto. Like, that's what's happening. Like, you're going to win the lotto, and everything's just going to fall into place, and it's not. And until that time, we're just making it harder to adjust to this new situation. We just keep on going further and further in the wrong direction. Where these kids, had this happened before cell phones, it'd be a lot easier. Although we have all this access to information now, which is great, and we could find information on how to do things, which is for some people is useful, but the majority of people are using it for, more going into the zombie land or the ghoul land, like where they just watch shit that is meaningless and purposeless. And, there's so much bad content out there now, too. Like just, even worse than, regular TV used to be. In many cases, much worse. And all the people, the addiction to pornography and violence and, things that are just, they have no value only to make you grosser and keep you disconnected from everything else in the world. But anyways, that's why people aren't willing to see what's so obvious to see, because Trump and his people are morons, and everybody can see it but the Trumpers. But if Biden was as much of a problem, which he was, in a different way, and the Democrats are as much of, they suck just as bad as the Republicans, or, in many cases worse, then there is no answer, right? And so what does that mean, right? Like if we were on the cusp of an apocalypse, like most people can see that, and there's nobody that you could look at as a savior that could, fix the system that can't be fixed because it's designed to do exactly what it's doing, then that means we're fucked, right? And so that's why people can't watch this channel, because they agree with everything I say, but they can't come to terms with that element of it. This is why we're fucked. And like, what are you going to do? And if you knew all the things you had to do spiritually and in your material life, you just curl up in the fetal position and give up, right? Because it's overwhelming. And, hopefully it comes in slow doses where people see, like, there's like, all right, things are changing. And, they're able to adjust themselves and start because I've been doing this for 20 years and I'm not prepared. Like, I'm probably 5 to 10 or 15% prepared. At a spiritual level, I'm probably 80%, 90, whatever. Maybe 100% prepared. But that doesn't transfer into physical life. But, we'll see. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.